Hello everybody, and welcome back to Authors in High Theory. I'm Celine, with a modern existentialist, and I'll be your host today. So last time, we laid out Beauvoir's Archetypes of Woman, a logical framework through which we can continue to explore and understand her high theory, and we examined the second set of two archetypes of woman, those who reject, yet still fail to break free from, the idea of belonging to man. If you haven't seen that episode, I'd recommend you go back and watch that before coming back to join us for this one. Alright, so value is created through the exercise of agency. In the act of living one's life, an individual necessarily engages in the expenditure of agency, one's effort and one's time, in order to create things which are useful and therefore considered valuable to oneself. This is what Nietzsche calls the will to power, that is, the empirically observable fact that people use their lives to make and do the things which they want to do, and which they believe have meaning, either to themselves or to others to whom those things will be left behind. The human being, as a subject and an agent, is one which possesses the ability to impart value upon the world. In being defined as she has been, however, as an object by the world of man, woman has been summarily stripped of her status as a subject. She has been, in effect, denied her agency by the fact that it is actively constrained by the collective agency of others, by the world of social objectivity. Where man is free to use his agency to define what he considers valuable, the reverse is true for women. That is, that woman's freedom, her agency, is instead defined by the way in which she is valued. Thus, the doll, as the woman who possesses beauty and therefore is considered valuable, is the woman who's enslaved to the act of defending and preserving that value, lest her freedom and her agency be allowed to slip away. The ogre, on the other hand, as the woman who possesses no beauty and therefore is considered not valuable, is the woman who's allowed to run free because she is deemed not woman at all. We can empirically observe that, in reality, agency isn't a trait which belongs either to woman or to man, but instead that it's a trait which is shared between them as a fundamentally human characteristic. Thus, to declare that agency belongs solely to man would be to deny not only the subject status of woman, but her human status as a whole. Agency, after all, the power to act upon and define the world for oneself, is not what differentiates man from woman, but is instead what differentiates a person from a thing. To claim otherwise would be, well, empirically wrong. After all, we can see and observe with our very own eyes that woman, in reality, does possess the ability to act upon and define the world for herself, through the exercise of her own power and will. To live, to exist, is to possess agency, the power to act upon and define the world for oneself. Thus, what it means to live is to expend and consume in order to create a world according to one's designs. To reject this idea is to reject the nature of existence itself. This is the meaning of the objectification of woman, that is, to deny the fact that woman also, as a human being, possesses the ability to consume, destroy, and create according to her own designs. Sartre says this: "The disquietude of the oppressed is not metaphysical. Instead, it is social. The ordinary object of his concern is not yet the place of man in the universe, but instead his place in society. He cannot perceive the loneliness of each man in the midst of a silent universe, because he has not yet emerged into that universe from society. It is among men that he feels himself lonely. The independent woman is the woman who has become aware of her own agency, and thereafter seeks to be regarded as a person. She is the one who aspires to be recognized and acknowledged by man in his world, not either as a doll, as an object to be used and claimed, nor as an ogre, as an object to be ignored or discarded. She seeks instead to be acknowledged as a free and equal subject and agent, as a full and equal human being. The gaze of the other, however, by definition, isn't free for any individual to define. The independent woman, like the narcissist, understands that she can't simply just choose to opt out of man's system of valuation, as the mystic attempts to do, lest she lose her place in society. Man, after all, is the one who creates and defines the world of social objectivity, and he has determined that woman should be the doll. And so, any woman who would seek to break away from this destiny as the doll, who would aspire to have her agency acknowledged by the world of man, will instead be immediately branded as the ogre, a woman who refuses to be tamed. A doll, after all, which speaks and moves and acts according to its own will, is the stuff of horror films and nightmares. A mannequin or a puppet which has been given power and agency is, quite literally, a monster. Like a pet bird which is broken free from its cage, woman, in seeking to break free from her situation, will, of course, have gained her freedom, and thus will no longer be a pet at all. Instead, she'll have become just like any other bird, free to live a short, feral life, and then die, nameless and unmourned. Because the independent woman seeks to have her agency, her subject status, acknowledged, she thus becomes the ogre, forfeiting her beauty in man's eyes. Because she seeks to have her humanity acknowledged, she therefore loses all fundamental value in man's eyes. And so we can see that, within a world which is created and defined by man, it is woman's beauty, her femininity, and her assigned status as the doll, which stands between her and the recognition of her human status. This is what it means for the woman who has realized that she is an agent, to then have to choose between becoming the doll or the ogre. That is, that she must choose here to present within the world as either an object or as a human being. She must choose between the act of playing the part of the doll, of acting in the way which man believes that woman is supposed to be, or of being authentic to herself, and thus running the risk of losing everything she's ever had, becoming branded as the ogre, and, in so doing, becoming stripped of her place in society. The independent woman is the woman who chooses to take this leap, who chooses to risk everything in her pursuit of authenticity, and in her attempt to become the master of her own fate. Where man is told that projects and passions are to be his vocation, that he is expected to find and possess a social purpose for himself, the independent woman is the woman who chooses this path for herself, the path on which she's been told that she's not supposed to be. The independent woman is the woman who, in seeking to become acknowledged as a full and equal human being, seeks to become valued in the same way which man is. She desires to be acknowledged as a subject and agent in and of herself, and so goes out and does what she's been told that subjects and agents are supposed to do, That is, that man is supposed to create and to build something which he can call his own. And so, she seeks to become a creator and destroyer, a master who exercises her power and ability to define the world for herself, just as man does. Woman's independence cannot be said to be equivalent to man's true freedom. The way toward true freedom, after all, is closed off and denied to her. Woman's independence is not man's true freedom. After all, no matter what she does or might try to do, the independent woman cannot escape the facticity of the gaze of the other, the situation to which she's confined, by the way in which she's perceived. She cannot literally cease to be woman and thereafter become only just human, no matter how much like man she might succeed in becoming. The surrender of her femininity will not make her any more human, just as the surrender of man's masculinity would not make him any less human. Thus, the way toward man's true freedom is barred against her by the world of social objectivity. Because she lives and exists in a world in which others constantly choose to deny the reality of her situation, that is, either the reality of her womanhood or the reality of her humanity, the independent woman is therefore not allowed to access a true freedom. Only in the company of others who acknowledge her as a free and equal subject and agent can woman also come to be able to occupy the space at the center of the box. Only within a world of social objectivity which acknowledges her as a free and equal human being can woman also become truly free. The freedom of woman comes in the socially objective acknowledgement, not that woman is like or may become like man, and can therefore possess a freedom like man's, but instead that there is a sense in which woman and man are already, at an empirical baseline, simply just the same. The acknowledgement that we are all, in spite of our differences, just simply human together. Woman is woman, and woman is feminine. Or, to be more precise, to be feminine is, in every sense of the word, defined as being like woman. The simple fact that woman is woman, that the feminine is objectified in the eyes of the world of man, does not provide any empirical motivation for the idea that we should consider her as any less human than man, any less capable of acting upon or defining the world according to her own power and agency. The possession of object status does not preclude or exclude the simultaneous possession of subject status. After all, as existentialists and empiricists, we know and understand already that man is not only either object or subject, not only either being or nothingness. Instead, he is both, subject and object, being and nothingness. And if it's the case that we acknowledge that man and woman are, in reality, both equally human, then it should be obvious at this point that woman also is not only either object or subject, not only either being or nothingness. Instead, she is also both, subject and object, being and nothingness. Nietzsche says this, that what it's like to live and exist as a woman within contemporary society is something that only ever really needs to be explained to men. Women, after all, don't need to be told what it's like to be a woman, because they're literally always constantly living the experience of being a woman. In The Second Sex, Beauvoir says this, that there is nothing which is so irritating to women as discussion of the topic of women. The greatest hurdle to the accessibility of an empirical feminism today is the fact that the topics of feminism and female empowerment have grown old, stale, and tired. Some regard the situation of women as a problem which has already been solved. Others ascribe to the idea of an emancipated feminine the character of some kind of grand, metaphysical ideal. Because the idea of feminism has been lost in this way to the serious world, nobody really wants to talk or hear about it anymore. And it is in silence where ideas go to die. There's something fundamentally honest about the way in which woman must confront her facticity. It's the business of man and men to be concerned with his attempt to discover the nature of a world of transcendent metaphysical objectivity. If it seems to you, however, as though the things to which women choose to dedicate their time are nothing more than passing trivial obsessions and petty preoccupations, then it might be worthwhile to stop and reconsider. After all, the world which we, as human beings, inhabit is not one of transcendent metaphysical objectivity. It is instead a world of social objectivity, a world composed of petty trivialities. Alright, this has been Celine, and I'll catch you all on the next one.